I decided to drive my son and daughter-in-law some handmade furniture. It had been a long time since we last connected. Last weekend, I packed the truck and set out. I felt excited to see them again, but something felt off this time. I've driven this route for years. The pine trees lined the road, and the sky was usually bright. But that day, the clouds rolled in quickly, growing darker by the minute. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Suddenly, rain started pounding my windshield. The sound was overwhelming. I could barely hear the radio anymore. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen. It was a message from my daughter-in-law. The voice was familiar, but something about it felt strange. I brushed it off, thinking it was just the storm messing with my head. But then I heard another message. It sounded urgent. "Turn back," it urged. My heart raced. I frowned. This couldn't be real. I told myself to focus. I was fine. I looked out the window to distract myself from the unease growing in my chest. That's when I saw a shadowy figure standing by the road. I slammed on the brakes, my stomach dropping. I peered into the rain. The figure vanished in an instant. I was losing my mind. I shook my head, telling myself to keep moving. But then my phone buzzed again. I heard her voice again, this time more frantic. "Margaret, please!" I felt chills race down my spine. I hated this feeling. I thought about pulling over, but the road was slippery. I pressed the gas instead, trying to outrun whatever was messing with my head. Memories flooded my mind. Laughter at dinner, my son's smile as he opened gifts. But now those memories felt tainted. The frantic voice on my phone rang out again, cutting through my thoughts. "Margaret." It felt haunting. My hands shook. I felt a cold fear settling in my gut. I reached a fork in the road. I had to choose. Should I turn back? I could still hear her voice. "Margaret, please." It sounded desperate. I felt frozen. What if I didn't make it in time? But then I thought, what if I wasn't supposed to keep going? As I wrestled with my feelings, I noticed headlights approaching. Another car drove by. It was moving fast. Something felt off about it. My skin crawled as it sped past. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was grip the wheel harder. The voice cried out one last time, chilling me to the core. "Help me!" Panic clawed at my chest. I was alone on this lonely road and unsure of what lurked in the storm. I didn't know what to do. I felt trapped between the memories that filled me with warmth and the fear that now paralyzed me. What awaited me at my son and daughter-in-law's home? I wasn't so sure anymore. I took a deep breath and made my decision. I couldn't ignore the voice any longer. I turned around, allowing the urge to protect them to guide me. The rain beat down harder, and the wipers struggled to keep up. As I made my way back, the road seemed darker. The trees loomed taller, casting long shadows. Each turn felt like a lifetime. My heart pounded as I replayed her voice in my head. Was someone in trouble? Did I miss something important? My phone buzzed again, and I winced. This time I didn't even need to look. I understood. I had to stop. The thought of my family needing me pushed me forward, but fear washed over me like the rain. Just then, my headlights caught something on the side of the road. I squinted. It was a child. A small figure stood soaked and shivering under a tree, arms wrapped around themselves. My stomach twisted. What kind of child was out here in this storm? I hesitated. The rain blurred my vision, but my instincts screamed at me to help. I parked the truck, heart racing. I stepped out into the storm, the cold water soaking through my shoes instantly. "Hey, are you okay?" I shouted over the downpour. The child looked up, wet hair plastered to their face. Their eyes were wide and filled with fear. "Help me!" they pleaded, voice barely rising above the chaos of the storm. They reached out, and I could see their trembling hands, my breath caught in my throat. "Where are your parents?" I asked, praying that I wouldn't hear what I feared. The child pointed down the road. They didn't come back." Lightning flashed, illuminating the child's tear-streaked face for just a moment. I felt the air tighten around me, and dread settled deeper. I thought of the frantic messages, my daughter-in-law's voice, and the heavy urgency I couldn't shake. Suddenly the child stepped closer, eyes darting behind me, a look of terror crossing their face. I turned instinctively, feeling a cold shiver crawl down my spine. The shadows seemed to shift, swirling in the rain. "Hurry!" the child urged. "We have to go!" My heart raced as I looked back at the storm-swept road. "But where to?" I asked, panic gripping my chest. The child didn't answer. They grabbed my hand, pulling me toward the woods. I hesitated, torn. I didn't know if I should follow. But then, in the distance, I heard something that made my blood run cold. A voice. "Margaret!" It was unmistakable. My daughter-in-law was calling, but it didn't sound like she was talking to me. I felt a primal urge to run. "We need to get out of here," I said to the child, but they stared wide-eyed, frozen in place. "They're coming," they whispered. I glanced back one last time and swallowed hard. Someone was in the darkness behind me, and wherever it was, it felt very close. I followed the child's grip, nearly tripping over roots and mud as we moved deeper into the trees. Rain poured down, masking our footsteps, but something about our escape felt wrong. The air felt heavier, charged with something else. "Over here!" The child pulled me toward a thicket, its dense foliage hiding us from view. I squeezed in beside them, trying to gather my bearings. "Why didn't your parents come back?" I whispered urgently. But the child didn't answer. Their eyes were fixated on the road behind us, wide and terrified. Then came the sound again. A rustle, the snapping of branches nearby. I held my breath, straining to listen. The urgency in the child's eyes intensified, and I felt the panic rise in my chest. "Stay quiet," I said, though my voice was a hoarse whisper. I peeked through the leaves, heart racing in my throat. The flash of headlights cut through the rain, moving slowly along the road, searching. In that moment, I felt like prey. "Who are they?" I swallowed hard, hoping the child might know something that could help us. "Bad people," they murmured, trembling. "They're looking for me. We have to stay hidden. Why do they want you?" I pressed, though I was afraid of their answer. The child's gaze flickered back to the road, and suddenly, not far from us, a figure emerged from the shadows, silhouetted against the lights. I caught my breath. The figure paused, searching the trees. And in that brief moment, I could see the outline of a hooded coat. My skin prickled. Something about their posture felt predatory, like they were hunting. I considered bolting, but the child's grip tightened around my arm. "No, we can't move," they whispered fiercely, fear pouring off them in waves. I nodded, lip trembling, trying to contain my own fear. Then the hooded figure stepped closer, and my worst fear materialized in that chilling second. They turned their head, and I glimpsed a face, pale and twisted, eyes scanning like a predator. It was then that I heard something that made my stomach drop. "Margaret, where are you?" The voice was closer now, more urgent. The realization hit me like a punch. It was my daughter-in-law, calling out for someone else in this nightmare. For a moment, the hooded figure froze, their focus shifting from us to the voice out in the storm. I looked back at the child, panic setting in. "What do we do?" I gasped, feeling the child's body tremble by my side. Before they could respond, the figure took a step away from the road, moving toward the source of the voice. I couldn't breathe. The clearing we were in felt too exposed now. "Follow me," the child suddenly whispered, pulling me further into the thicket. I hesitated, anxiety thrumming in my chest. "What if they see us?" I asked, but the child didn't answer. They pressed forward, their instincts screaming for safety. That's when I saw it. A small, dilapidated cabin through the trees, barely discernible in the storm. I glanced back at the hooded figure, but they were distracted. The only sound was the relentless rain and the distant calling echoing through the night. "Is there a way in?" I asked, heart pounding. The child nodded, eyes wide with fear and desperation. Without another thought, I followed them deeper into the woods, praying that we'd reach the safety of that cabin before it was too late. The child took the lead, and I stumbled after them, the darkness thickening the air around us. I could barely make out the cabin now, and my hope dwindled with each step. The rain was blurring my vision, and the child's grip was the only thing grounding me. Suddenly we reached the cabin. The door hung loosely on its hinges, creaking ominously as the child pushed it open. I winced at the sound, but the fear of the hooded figure outside drove me forward. Inside, the cabin was pitch black. I felt the child's small frame next to me, shivering in the dampness. "Can you see anything?" I whispered. There was no answer. I fumbled for my phone, thankful for its faint light. As I turned it on, the flickering beam revealed peeling walls and a ratty old rug caked with dirt. "Do you know this place?" I asked the child, trying to stay calm. They shook their head, eyes reflecting my phone's light. "Just hide," they insisted. "They can't find us here." I looked toward the windows, the darkness outside pressing against the glass. Despite the storm, I could still hear the rain drumming on the roof. It drowned out any other sound, but I felt a sense of dread creeping in. How long could we stay hidden? That's when I heard it. A distant thud, followed by a muffled voice. My heart raced as I strained to listen. Someone was out there, approaching. "What are we gonna do?" I whispered, panic flooding my voice. The child shushed me, but I couldn't hold back my fear. The noises grew louder, the sound of footsteps crunching on the ground outside. "They're coming," I uttered, my throat dry. The child's eyes widened, terror etched on their face. In the dim light of my phone, I realized they were shaking uncontrollably. "Find a place to hide," I said, my voice shaky but urgent. The child nodded and darted to a corner of the room, diving behind an old rotting couch. I followed instinctively, pressing myself against the wall, praying it wouldn't creak under my weight. Footsteps stopped just outside the cabin. I heard low murmurs, indistinguishable but menacing, like whispers of impending doom. "Check the cabin," one voice said. My breath caught in my throat. Then it came. Heavy footsteps entering the cabin, the door slamming shut behind them. The warmth of the storm seemed to evaporate, replaced by an icy chill. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my ears. The darkness felt alive, each shadow shifting and writhing with my unsteady heartbeat. "Where are you, Margaret?" The voice slithered through the air. It wasn't just a search. It was a hunt. I could see the child's wide eyes from my hiding spot, their fear catching in my throat. I dared another glance towards the door. The figure moved slowly through the dark, their silhouette barely visible, lurking in the cabin. I wished desperately for a weapon, anything to defend us, but all we had were the remnants of this old cabin surrounding us. Then Just as suddenly as they entered, the figure turned toward our corner, a sinister smile forming. That's when an earring fell from my pocket, rolling across the wooden floor. The figure froze, and my stomach dropped. They had heard it. "Margaret," they whispered, conspiratorial and haughty. "I know you're in here." My heart dropped into my stomach at the sound of my name. The figure's voice held an unsettling familiarity, and I felt the air thicken around me. I took a silent breath, forcing myself to stay as still as possible. Come out, wherever you are," they taunted, their voice echoing off the cabin walls. Panic surged through me, and I glanced at the child trembling behind the couch. I was terrified of what would happen if they found us, but I couldn't let the fear paralyze me. "Stay quiet," I mouthed to the child, hoping they understood. I knew we were trapped, but I had to think of something. The figure took a step closer, the floor creaking beneath them. I struggled to hear their movements over the storm, but a thought struck me. I had to create a distraction. I carefully reached for my phone, moving it slightly to guide the beam of light across the room. It passed over an old, broken dresser. I breathed deeply, hoping the time I lost wouldn't be our last. I swiped a hand across the coarse wooden surface, hoping to shift something that would make noise. "Don't hide forever, Margaret. I've missed you," the figure said, and I could hear the smirk in their voice. I knocked a metal candle holder off the dresser. It clattered to the ground, sending a loud echo through the cabin. I barely breathed as the figure turned, compelled by the sound. The child's wide eyes met mine, fear mixing with a flicker of hope. "Maybe I'll find my little friend first," the figure said, edging away from our corner. I held my breath, praying it was enough of a diversion. I waited, listening intently to the footsteps retreating. I began to inch my way toward the exit, heart still racing, ready to grab the child and flee at the first opportunity. That's when I saw it, a glimmer of something reflective near the doorway. Fear pulsed through me as I squinted to see better. It wasn't just a shine, it was a knife. Cold dread filled my stomach as I recognized the object's true purpose. I was paralyzed, knowing that whoever this was had come prepared. "Margaret!" The figure called again, now sounding impatient. "Are you really going to let me find you?" I need to move. I wanted to turn and bolt back to where the child was hiding, but if I made a sound, it would all be over. The tension in the air was unbearable. I finally steeled myself, shifting toward the exit silently, keeping an eye on the knife. But as I stepped back, the floor creaked ominously beneath me. The figure turned suddenly, their eyes locking onto mine. A smile stretched across their face as they said, "There you are." Everything went dark. The cabin door swung open violently. I stumbled back, the sudden rush of cold air sweeping through the cabin as the door flew open. My heart raced as the outline of the figure blurred against the storm outside. I could barely see their face, but the glint of the knife caught my eye, a chilling reminder of the danger I faced. "Margaret," they breathed, as if savoring my name. "You've been running for so long. It's time to end this." I pressed myself against the wall, fingers gripping the splintered wood. I had to keep moving, but my legs felt like lead. Adrenaline coursed through me, and the child's frightened expression flashed in my mind. I couldn't leave them behind. I needed to act, and fast. In the blink of an eye, I spotted movement in the shadows, a fleeting glimpse of the child trying to inch away from their hiding place. A surge of fear struck me. I couldn't let them be discovered. "Stay back," I whispered harshly, praying the child could follow my lead. I grabbed a heavy book off the shelf, a random thought, my instinct overtaking logic. I barely had time to think. I hurled it with all my might toward the opposite wall, causing a loud thud. "Is that you, Margaret?" The figure yelled, their voice sounding closer now. I had to be quiet, but the urgency to protect the child overwhelmed my fear. I turned, whispering as fiercely as I dared. "We need to move." I caught a glimpse of my phone fading in and out, illuminating the darkness with a soft glow. In a split second, I sprinted toward the doorway, pulling the child along with me. I felt their tiny hand clutch mine tightly. The figure didn't hesitate. "You think you can escape that easily?" they shouted, charging after us with the knife raised high. I bolted out the door and into the storm, the heavy rain drenching us instantly. The wind howled like angry spirits, but I could hear the figure's footsteps thundering behind us. "Run!" I screamed, urging the child forward as we dashed into the thicket of trees surrounding the cabin. Branches whipped against my face, the coldness seeping through my clothes, but I had to keep going. I couldn't think about anything else but getting us to safety. The child stumbled, and I quickly crouched down, whispering, "Stay close. Don't let them see you." I could barely see, but I gestured toward a cluster of bushes ahead, hoping they would provide us some cover. Just then, I heard it, a low growl, rumbling from somewhere close. My body froze. The figure's footfalls had stopped, replaced by this new, ominous sound. What now? I thought. As we nestled behind the bushes, my heart thundered in my chest. Then out of the corner of my eye, I caught movement, the figure stumbling back as shadows emerged from the trees, surrounding them. I squinted through the downpour. Were they chasing after the figure, or was it something worse? The tension skyrocketed as I grasped the child tighter, preparing for whatever would come next. The growl reverberated through the air, deep and threatening. I watched, hardly daring to breathe, as the figure staggered back, their knife glinting under flashes of lightning. Something was coming. Something bigger and more dangerous. "What is that?" the child whispered, fear palpable in their voice. I shushed them, nudging closer. The shadows in the trees shifted. I strained to see, but the rain blurred my vision. My mind raced. Had I led us into a trap? Could we be cornered by something worse than the knife-wielding figure? Then I saw it, a large shape materializing, fur bristling as if agitated by the storm. A massive wolf, or something like it, stood menacingly just at the edge of the trees, staring down the figure. The figure stumbled back, clearly shaken. "Run!" I urged, tugging on the child's arm, but we were frozen, caught between two threats. The growl deepened. It was not just a warning, it was a declaration of intent. The figure turned to face the creature, fear now evident on their face. "Stay back!" they shouted, the bravado fading. The knife faltered in their grip. Suddenly the wolf lunged. It was a blur of teeth and fur, ripping past the figure, who cried out in shock. I wasted no time. I pulled the child away from the scene, instinct guiding our steps deeper into the trees as chaos erupted behind us. Branches whipped at my face, but I barely felt it. I had to find a place to hide. I glanced back. The figure was down, their voice lost in the howl of the wind and clash of the storm. The wolf was no longer visible, but I could hear the struggle. "Where do we go?" the child asked, breathless. "Anywhere but here," I replied, determination flooding through me. My eyes caught a faint glow in the distance. Could it be another cabin, or a house? I didn't care. It was a chance. I pressed onward, the child stumbling behind me, soaked and fragile. Every snap of a twig made my heart leap. The howling wind felt alive, urging us to flee. As we approached the light, I spotted figures moving within. It was hard to make out through the rain, but they seemed human. Relief washed over me. "Help! We need help!" I screamed, pushing through the underbrush, but hesitation washed over me. What if they were not who they seemed? Then I froze, my breath hitching in my throat. There was a figure stepping out from the foundation of the building. A familiar silhouette that made my pulse quicken. "Margaret?" It was her voice, carrying through the storm, bittersweet and haunting. My thoughts spiraled. I knew that voice. It belonged to someone I had lost, someone I had thought was gone forever. "Margaret, are you there?" My body trembled. Was this real? Or a cruel trick of the mind in a night filled with nightmares? I hesitated, the child pulling at my hand. Whatever I saw next could change everything. But I had to know. I took another step towards the voice, heart pounding, wondering if salvation or more terror awaited me inside. I stepped forward, barely aware of the child beside me. The name hung in the air, heavy with memories. Could this really be Margaret? I gripped the doorframe, the wood slick with rain. "Margaret!" I called again, my voice wavering. The silhouette shifted, stepping closer into the light. The figure was impossibly familiar yet different. Her face was obscured by rain and shadows, but there was no mistaking the way she moved. It was like time had folded back on itself. "Please, you have to help us," I shouted. She seemed to hesitate for a moment, then a flicker of recognition crossed her features. "Is that really you?" Her voice was a mix of disbelief and longing. "Yes, it's me, but we—" The child beside me tugged harder, panic evident in their wide eyes. "We shouldn't be here. We need to go." I glanced behind us. The storm was growing more ferocious, and the chaos of the earlier scene lingered like a shadow at my back. I turned back to Margaret. Something felt wrong. She looked different. "Come inside," she urged, but her tone held an edge I couldn't quite place. It sent a shiver down my spine. "No, wait. What happened? How are you here?" "Come in," she demanded more forcefully, almost desperate. "It's not safe out here." Before I could answer, the door creaked open farther, revealing what seemed to be a simple room inside, lit by flickering candles. But as my eyes adjusted, more details came into focus. Dark corners filled with odd trinkets, and the walls lined with pictures. Some were of us, others I didn't recognize. The atmosphere thickened, an unsettling energy pricking at my senses. I took another hesitant step inside, drawn by something I didn't understand. "Margaret, we need to leave. Something is hunting us." Her expression changed. A flicker of concern crossed her face, but it was quickly replaced by a calculating stare. "Not yet. You don't understand the situation," she said slowly, stepping back into the shadows of the room. "They're coming." "Who?" I asked, my heart racing. She pointed to the door, and I noticed movement outside. Distant shadows flitting between the trees, drawn in by the light. My pulse quickened. "What do you mean? What's out there?" "It's not just the wolf. There are worse things." I felt a chill creep over my skin. "What do you know?" I demanded. But before she could answer, a loud crash echoed through the storm, making the walls tremble. Then it hit me. What if this wasn't the reunion I hoped for? What if something else was happening? Something beyond my understanding? "Margaret," I called, but her eyes widened, fear breaking through her composure. "Get back!" she shouted. And that's when the door slammed shut behind us. The sudden darkness swallowed the light, and I was left standing on the threshold, a sense of impending doom sinking in. Panic rose in my chest. I felt trapped, caught between the safety of the unknown and the horrors I'd just escaped. Something was not right, and every instinct screamed to run. But the truth was, I had nowhere else to go. As the shadows loomed closer, I faced the awful realization. Sometimes help could be more dangerous than the threat outside. The darkness swallowed us whole. I stumbled into the room, clutching the child's hand tightly. The flickering candles cast long shadows that danced erratically against the walls, creating an unsettling ambience. Margaret leaned against the wall, her eyes wide, and her breath quickened as if she had just witnessed a ghost. "Why did you come back?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I could hardly see her face, but I felt the weight of her question. "You weren't supposed to. What are you talking about?" I replied, confusion mixing with fear. "I thought you were in danger. You called for help." "It was too late then," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It may already be too late for you." Before I could respond, the shadows outside began to throb. They twisted and turned, looking almost alive. The wind howled like a wounded animal, rattling the shutters. The child beside me began to whimper, pressing closer to my side. "Margaret, what's happening?" I asked, my voice rising in panic. "They're here," she said, eyes darting to the door. "You must listen to me. We can't leave this place until the storm passes. They're hunting." "Who are they?" I demanded, desperation creeping in. "You need to help us." Suddenly there was a crash as something slammed against the door with ferocity. The entire room shuddered, and dust fell from the rafters. My heart raced. I spun to face the entry, my breath hitching in my throat. Margaret moved closer, urgency in her steps. "Listen, if you want to survive, I can protect you, but you need to trust me." Her words sent chills up my spine, but I didn't see another way out. "Protect us from what?" I asked, glancing back at the door, which groaned ominously. "From the shadows," she replied, her gaze piercing mine. "We have to prepare." "What do we have to prepare for?" I pressed, but she held up a hand to silence me. Then I heard it. A low growl emanating from outside. It rolled like thunder, vibrating in my bones. My breath caught in my throat as the shadows morphed into dark figures, indistinguishable, but undeniably close. "Get down!" Margaret shouted, and we both dropped to the floor, hiding behind a table. The growling grew louder, mixed with whispers that chilled my blood. "They want you too," she breathed, eyes wide in terror. "Don't let them know you're here." I ducked low, trying to steady my racing heart. "What do you mean?" I whispered harshly. "Once they find you," she continued urgently, "there's no escape. They take everything." I dared a glance out from our hiding place. The door rattled, and splinters flaked off the wood. Panic flooded my chest again. This wasn't right. I was supposed to be saving her, not hiding from whatever terror had come to claim us. "What if I can't?" I began to say, but the growl escalated into a roar that shook the door. My hesitation turned into determination. I had to make a choice. Relying on Margaret felt risky, but staying in the shadows was not an option. I reached for the handle of the door, fingers trembling. "Wait!" Margaret gasped, panic lacing her voice. "What are you doing?" "Getting us out of here," I said, my resolve hardening. But as I pushed my weight against the door, I froze. Someone pressed against it from the outside, and the whispers grew clearer. I found out who they were. I stared into Margaret's eyes, and that just made it worse. I slammed my shoulder against the door, adrenaline surging through me. The pressure from the outside was immense, the presence looming ominously, knowing it had found us. I hesitated, a sliver of doubt cutting through my anger. I could feel Margaret's eyes boring into me, pleading with me to reconsider. "Margaret, who are they?" I demanded, my voice a mix of fear and desperation. She opened her mouth as if to answer, but before the words could reach my ears, the growling intensified. It whispered sinister promises, threatening to break down the wall between us and whatever lurked in the shadows. I swallowed hard, scanning the dim room for a possible escape. But there were no windows, only the flickering candles casting long, distorted shapes across the peeling walls. "Margaret!" I said louder, panic setting in deeper. "You have to tell me what's going on." "Listen," she hissed, voice trembling now. "You're in danger, not just from them. The truth seemed caught on her tongue, lost amid the chaos outside. The door bucked violently, rattling on its hinges just as whispers began to rise, almost harmonizing. The whispers were laced with taunting familiarity, and suddenly I felt the weight of every unresolved issue that brought me to this stormy night. "Let me in, Margaret," the voice outside cooed, brushing against the back of my mind. "You know I won't hurt you. Just open the door for us." "No," I shouted, stepping in front of the child. A feeling like crawling ice gripped my heart. "Stay back." I had to act before the pressure became insurmountable. What came next was instinct, an overwhelming urge to protect the child beside me, to keep them safe at all costs. I leveled my gaze at Margaret, desperate for her guidance amid the chaos. "Tell me what to do," I urged, hoping she'd finally explain the situation. Her expression shifted, revealing a flash of something. Regret? Fear? "You can't let them in, no matter what," she said urgently. "They will take more than you realize. They feed on despair. They're here to collect." At that moment, a loud crack echoed through the space. The door splintered as a shadow clawed its way through, dark tendrils creeping into the room like smoke. The whispering grew louder, echoing with the haunting call of familiar faces I lost long ago. "Help, Margaret!" Their voices rang out in unison, drowning me in despair as they reached for me. My heart raced. I gripped the child's small hand tighter, torn between wanting to comfort them and the terror building around us. "What do we do?" I practically sobbed, looking back to Margaret. Just then, the wolf's growl erupted outside, mingling with the whispers. A deep rumbling sound that drove back the silhouettes. If only for a moment. It felt like the creature sensed our fear, its presence drawing nearer. Margaret took a deep breath, as if bracing for something monumental. "It's going to test you. You must face it, and I can only hold them back for so long. Trust your instincts." "Face what?" I shouted, confusion overwhelming me. And then it all clicked. The urgency, the figures outside, the memories intertwining with twisting nightmares. But before I could process it fully, the door burst open, splintering wood and slamming hard against the wall. The shadows poured in, coiling and shifting around us like living smoke. I filled my lungs, ready to scream. But the sound slipped away as the darkness enveloped us. I instinctively shielded the child with my body, the cold grasp of despair clutching at my heart, and began to move toward the flickering shadows. Suddenly, Margaret stepped forward with determination. "You can't have them!" she yelled, the flickering light catching her face, illuminating a resolve I'd never seen before. Encouraged, I grabbed the child's hand, and together we pressed towards the sanctity of the flickering candles, lighting our path through the encroaching darkness. "Margaret, come with us," I begged. "No!" she screamed back, turning to face the shadowed figures rising like wraiths. "I have to atone for what I allowed to happen. You must break free." In that moment, light and dark clashed like thunder, and I could feel the tension tightening in the air, rippling through my body. Shadows lurked ever closer, and the fear they embody clutched my chest. Imagination blending with reality. Confusion and resolve wrestled in my mind until clarity sparked from deep within. I felt the child squeeze my hand, emboldened by the warmth we still possessed, igniting a forgotten fire. "We have to go," I urged again, my voice echoing resolutely amid the din. I wasn't ready to lose someone else again, and before despair could take me again, I focused on the glimmer in the depth of my heart. Whether we crossed the threshold into the light, or plunged deeper into the darkness, didn't matter at that point. Underneath the chaos, a choice had to be made. As shadows surged, I took a deep breath and broke away from the shadows, pulling the child with me towards the door, the chaos erupting behind us. "We are not afraid. Not anymore." In that moment, everything pulsated, the very essence of both fear and hope entwining around us, as we flooded out of that cabin and into the storm, bolting into the night where questions still lingered. Was the truth a reflection of reality, or was it merely woven from the threads of fear? All I knew was that I needed to keep moving, dodging the whispers and the shadows that trailed behind, materializing into faces I recognized, but feared. Because in that storm, I realized that sometimes the scariest monsters were the ones we couldn't explain, the very shades of our lives that once were, now threatening to consume us. All while whispers still echoed in the dark. As we ran, I felt the weight of Margaret's choice behind me, but fate had yet to reveal its path, leaving questions that may never be answered. The storm raged on, but through the chaos, I felt a flicker of hope, trusting that somehow I had found a way to shield the child beside me from the darkness still lurking just beyond my reach.